A Werewolf Shifter Romance by Cauliflower Campbell. Chapter 32. Air Lessons. Graduation brought no rest. While her classmates spent their days sprawled across the meadows of Lichen Ridge, drinking in their newfound freedom, Iris Stormbane walked the echoing halls of the estate with her head bowed under the weight of expectation. Stormbane Estate was no ordinary home. It was an archive, a fortress, and a throne, all carved into one sprawling labyrinth of stone and shadow. Its vaulted ceilings soared like cathedrals, and its marble floors bore the tread of centuries. Every morning, the toll of the bronze clock summoned her not to leisure, but to lessons, and not lessons of literature or mathematics, but of lineage, law, and legacy. The vast library became her world. Rows upon rows of leather-bound volumes lined the shelves, their spines gleaming in dim golden lamplight. Scrolls written in archaic hands were unfurled before her, their ink faded but their meaning sharp. Council chambers smelled of oak polish and firewood, their long tables stretching endlessly, polished smooth by the elbows of rulers past. Her instructors were scholars, elders, and sometimes hardened warriors retired from duty. They tutored her in shifter law, taught her the boundaries of treaty lines, explained the fragile threads of alliance that bound Lichen Ridge's packs into something resembling unity. But it wasn't the politics that carved deepest into her soul. It was her grandmother's words. Lady Evangeline Stormbane. Her hair, silver as frost, was pulled into a crown-like coil. Her gown was dark velvet, her jewelry understated yet heavy with history. She was not a woman of wasted words. When she entered the chamber, even the tutors stepped aside. That day, she found Iris seated before a stack of parchments, her blonde hair tied back, eyes burning with tired determination. Celine, only 14, had slipped in after school and perched on a cushioned bench, legs swinging as she pretended to read but mostly watched her sister. "Iris," her grandmother said, her voice like iron over crystal. "Set that aside. We speak now of weightier things." Iris rose immediately, pressing her hands together respectfully. "Yes, grandmother." The elder woman circled her like a hawk, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Finally, she stopped before a great portrait that dominated the chamber wall. A woman with vibrant auburn hair, fierce eyes, and a stance that radiated power. Aurora Stormbane, the first hybrid, both witch and wolf. "You are a Stormbane," her grandmother intoned, her eyes narrowing. "And you carry more than this house's future. You carry its past." She placed a cool, steady hand on Iris's shoulder. "You are descended from Aurora Stormbane, the one who defied bloodlines, who carved a place for herself in a world that feared her. She was cunning, she was fierce, and above all, she was just. That blood runs in you. It makes you strong. But strength unsettles. Others will see you not as heir but as threat. Do you understand?" Iris swallowed. The fire from the nearby hearth threw shadows across her face. "Yes, grandmother, I understand." Her grandmother's grip tightened. "No. You listen. Balance, Iris. That is your true inheritance. To wield storm and flame, and yet to calm them before they consume all. Fail this, and you will not only lose this house, you will doom it." The words pressed into Iris's chest like a brand. She bowed her head. "I will not fail." Across the chamber, Celine's small hands tightened around her sketchbook. Her wide eyes shimmered, reflecting the firelight. She had heard every word. She always did. After her grandmother swept from the room, the tutors dispersed. Iris sank onto the nearest chair, exhaling a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her heart thudded against her ribs. Celine hopped off her bench and hurried over, her braid bouncing. "She's wrong about one thing." Iris blinked at her. "What do you mean?" Celine plopped down on the chair opposite her, her pencil smudges still on her fingers. "She said you might fail, but you won't. You're the strongest person I know. You already balance everything. Me, school, now this." She kicked her heels against the chair leg nervously. I don't want you to think you're alone in it." Iris smiled faintly, her throat tight. Celine, her little sister's jaw firmed. One day I'll help you. Just like Aurora had Alina, you'll have me. I'll learn, I'll remember. The words chilled Iris more than they warmed her, because she knew Celine's memory was unyielding. Every vow, every warning. Celine kept them like treasures. Later that evening, Iris sat alone in her room. The night outside pressed heavy against the windows, the forest stretching beyond in whispers and shadows. She traced her fingers over the storm-bane crest carved into her desk. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind: balance, strength, threat. She closed her eyes. In her heart, she saw Aurora's portrait again. The defiance, the loneliness in her painted eyes. Was that her future too? A life where power always walked beside suspicion? Her door creaked. Celine slipped inside with a mug of tea, far too big for her small hands. I thought you'd need this, she whispered, setting it on the desk. Iris turned, her expression softening. You're going to spoil me if you keep this up. Celine's smile was lopsided. Better spoiled than stressed. Iris pulled her close, tucking her sister beneath her arm. Together, they sat in silence, staring out at the forest where secrets waited. And Iris whispered a vow into the stillness, so quiet Celine almost didn't hear. I will honor Aurora. I will honor Stormbane. And I will protect you, Celine, no matter what it costs me. Celine tilted her head up, her eyes shining. Then I'll protect you too. The moment lingered, warm and heavy all at once, binding them with a promise that would shape their futures more than either of them yet understood. Chapter 33. A Proposal Beneath the Stars. The Stormbane Gardens had always felt like another world. By day, they were filled with whispers of fountains, bursts of color from carefully pruned roses, and the rustling of lavender stalks brushed by the wind. But by night, on that particular evening, the gardens were transformed into something ethereal. Lanterns glowed along the stone paths, golden light spilling in halos upon the trimmed hedges. Jasmine, always strongest after sunset, perfumed the air until it clung to every breath. The sky above was clear, a blanket of stars so sharp they looked close enough to pluck. Iris walked slowly beside Christopher Fisher Blackthorne, her hand tucked loosely into the crook of his arm. Weeks of air lessons had worn her thin, the weight of history and expectation pressing into her shoulders, but here, under the stars, she allowed herself to breathe differently, lighter, freer. Christopher glanced at her often as they walked, his gray eyes reflecting the lantern light. He had always been striking, his dark hair brushed back in an effortless sweep, his tailored jacket lending him the elegance of someone bred for leadership. Yet tonight there was something else in his expression, a quiet intensity that made her heart skip in ways she had never admitted aloud. You're quiet, he murmured, breaking the stillness as they reached the fountain at the heart of the gardens. The water trickled in soft music, shimmering beneath the lanterns. What weighs on you, Iris Stormbane? You've been locked away with books and counsel for months now. Am I allowed to steal you away even for an hour? She smiled faintly, though her fingers tightened on his sleeve. You already have. No council chamber or lesson could ever compete with this. She gestured toward the stars, her blue eyes catching the moonlight. Christopher studied her for a moment, his thumb brushing along the back of her hand as if testing the courage of what he meant to say. Finally, he inhaled slowly, as though gathering strength from the night itself. Iris, he began, his voice softer now, you've always carried the world with such grace. Since we were children, I've watched you stand taller than your years. You never falter, not for yourself, not for Celine, not even for those who would see you stumble. It's always been inspiring and maddening, he added with a slight chuckle, because you make it look effortless when I know it is not. Her breath caught, her cheeks warming as she looked away. "Christopher." But before she could speak further, he turned fully toward her, taking her hands in his. The intensity in his eyes deepened. "I've always known," he continued, brushing his thumb gently across her knuckles. "From the moment I saw you, not just the Stormbane heir, not the girl destined to lead, but you, Iris, that you're the only one I want beside me." She laughed softly, a nervous, breathless sound that betrayed her fluttering heart. "Christopher, don't—" But he was already moving, already sinking to one knee on the stone path, the gravel crunching softly beneath him. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to still, the night holding its breath. From his pocket, he drew out a small velvet box, and within it, a ring that caught the lantern glow, then the moonlight, and shimmered as though it had captured starlight itself. "Marry me," he said simply, his voice steady and clear. "Be my Luna, be my partner, forever." The words reverberated through her chest, her heart racing so wildly she thought he must hear it. Her lips parted, but no sound came at first. She felt tears prick her eyes, her throat tightening with the flood of emotion she hadn't been ready to face. "Christopher," she whispered, her hand trembling as she brought it to her lips. He looked up at her, a rare vulnerability glimmering in those storm-gray eyes. "Iris, I don't ask this because it's expected, not because it would unite our houses or please the council. I ask because I can't imagine a future without you. Every fight, every triumph, every dawn, I want it to be us." She felt the tears slip free then, sliding warm against her chilled cheeks. Her heart leapt, her soul seeming to lurch forward and crash into his words. For so long she had carried herself with duty, with the weight of expectation. But here was something she wanted, for herself. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. Her tears fell freely now, her smile trembling. "Yes, Christopher, yes." His shoulders dropped with relief, his chest lifting with a laugh that sounded like sunlight. He rose swiftly, sliding the ring onto her finger with hands that shook just slightly. The cool band settled against her skin, and she stared at it as though the stars themselves had gifted it to her. Then his arms were around her, his lips finding hers in a kiss that banished the world. The jasmine, the lanterns, the distant night, all of it faded into nothing. There was only the heat of his mouth, the steadiness of his embrace, the way his heartbeat matched her own. When they finally broke apart, her forehead rested against his chest, his arms encircling her as though he would never let go. "Do you realize," he murmured into her hair, his voice thick with emotion, "what you've just done to me? I'll never sleep again, Iris Stormbane. Not without dreaming of our future." She laughed softly, a sound that tangled with her tears. "Then neither will I." They lingered there beneath the stars, the world hushed around them. In that moment, with the ring warm on her finger and his promise ringing in her heart, Iris felt something she had rarely known. Freedom. Freedom not from duty but within it. Because with Christopher, forever didn't feel like a burden. It felt like home. And under the watchful gaze of the moon, Iris Stormbane, heir, sister, future leader, allowed herself to be only one thing: a woman in love. Chapter 34. Luna and Alpha. The day of their union dawned with a brilliance that seemed to sweep across all of Lichen Ridge. Morning sunlight spilled like liquid gold over the Stormbane estate, gilding its high windows and manicured lawns. The scent of fresh blooms lingered everywhere. Thousands of white roses, lilies, and wildflowers had been arranged by hand, their petals glistening with dew. It was as though nature itself leaned in, ready to witness history. From the earliest hours, carriages, sleek, luxurious cars, and motorbikes bearing the insignias of the great houses poured into the grounds. Stormbane guards in ceremonial uniforms ushered guests through tall iron gates, their voices echoing above the hum of arrival. Elders, alphas, betas, and dignitaries from every corner of the ridge filled the estate, their murmurs carrying reverence and curiosity. for though they had attended countless ceremonies, none carried the same weight, the same anticipation, as this one. Inside the grand hall, Iris stood before a tall mirror, draped in a gown of silver-threaded silk that shimmered like moonlight. Her hair, a golden cascade, had been braided with tiny pearls, each one catching the light as if stitched by stars themselves. Celine fussed with the veil, her hands careful but eager, her wide eyes glistening with both awe and pride. "You look like—" Celine hesitated, her lips trembling before she broke into a grin. "Like a queen. Not just a Luna. More than that." Iris smiled softly, smoothing her sister's hair. "Not a queen, Celine. Just your sister, who happens to be marrying the man she loves." Celine's gaze shone fiercely. "No, you're not just anything anymore." Before Iris could respond, the door opened and Maya swept in like a flame brought to life. She was radiant in her crimson dress, her red hair gleaming in loose curls. The grin on her lips was wide, wicked and proud. "Stormbane," Maya teased, resting her hands on her hips. "You're about to walk out there and bind yourself to Blackthorn. I always knew you had it in you. Didn't think you'd look this perfect doing it, though." Iris rolled her eyes, though her cheeks flushed. "Maya?" But Maya's grin softened into something gentler. She crossed the room, clasped Iris's hands in her own, and whispered, "You deserve this. You deserve every moment of it. And he deserves you." Before the emotion could linger too long, the trumpet sounded, summoning them all. The ceremony was held beneath the open sky, in a courtyard where the Stormbane banners fluttered high. White chairs lined the stone path, leading to an altar draped in flowers and silks. The air carried the murmur of hundreds of voices, but when Iris appeared, silence fell like a reverent hush. Christopher stood waiting, tall and steady in his black suit, a silver crest at his chest. His gray eyes softened the moment they landed on her. Every muscle in his body seemed to still, as though time itself had bowed in surrender. As she walked toward him, every step light but certain, Iris felt her pulse match the rhythm of the drums that beat faintly in the background. She could feel the eyes of the elders, the admiration of allies, the envy of rivals. But when her gaze locked with Christopher's, all of it melted into insignificance. When she reached him, he took her hands, his voice carrying strong and sure. "Iris Stormbane, with this bond, I vow not just loyalty but love, not just leadership but partnership. You are my Luna, my equal in all things." Her heart swelled as she answered, her voice steady even as her eyes brimmed with tears. "Christopher Blackthorn, with this bond, I vow not just love but devotion, not just to stand beside you but to rise with you. You are my alpha, my partner, my forever." When the marking came, Christopher brushed her golden locks from her neck with almost reverent care. He lowered his mouth to her skin, his breath sending shivers racing through her body. The instant his teeth broke her flesh, heat surged through them both, the bond igniting like fire beneath their skin. When the bond snapped into place like lightning through her veins, Iris gasped softly, clutching his arms for balance as the room seemed to tilt, reality bending under the sheer weight of connection. When she returned the mark, her lips pressed against the strong line of his neck, Christopher's breath hitched, his wolf howled inside him, triumphant, claiming home. Their souls locked. Two halves of the same whole, no longer separate, never again alone. Her blue eyes gleamed, not just with softness, but with a fierce power that radiated outward until even the most stoic elders shifted uneasily in their seats. The applause thundered through the courtyard. The Stormbane air was no longer just air. She was Luna. The celebration stretched long into the night. Music spilled into the air, a blend of violins, drums, and laughter. Long tables laden with food gleamed beneath strings of lantern light. Couples danced on the stone floor. Children darted between legs, and for once, even the most guarded warriors allowed themselves joy. Iris, now seated beside Christopher at the head table, glanced out at the sea of faces. Beside her, his hand never left hers. Every time she looked at him, the bond surged again, warm, electrifying, a constant reminder that they were united. "Still breathing?" Christopher teased under his breath, his gray eyes glinting with mischief. "Barely," she admitted with a quiet laugh. "But only because you keep looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you'd burn the whole world if it ever tried to take me away." He smirked, leaning closer, his lips brushing her ear. "That's because I would." Her cheeks flushed as Maya's voice rang out from the dance floor, pulling the attention of everyone present. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maya shouted, her grin wide and daring, "if Iris can steal herself a blackthorn, then it's only fair I show you how a redwood does it." The crowd roared with laughter as Damien Silverfang, with his trademark swagger, dropped to one knee in front of her right then and there, a ring flashing in his hand. His voice rang bold and playful. "Maya Redwood, you drive me insane. You argue with me, you outsmart me, you make me laugh when I least want to. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Be my Luna, be my partner. Let's rule Redwood together, with fire and with laughter." Maya's red hair shimmered as she threw back her head and laughed, pure joy lighting her features. "Damien Silverfang," she shouted back, "took you long enough." And without hesitation, she yanked him to his feet and kissed him hard, sending the crowd into cheers that shook the night. Iris clapped until her palms stung, tears blurring her vision again. To her left, Christopher leaned close, murmuring with a smile, "Seems the Ridge will have 2 weddings to celebrate. 2 unions," Iris whispered, her voice soft but steady. "2 futures. Side by side." She looked out at Maya and Damien, her wild, fiery friend and the boy who had tamed her in the best way possible. Then she looked back at Christopher, her hand tightening in his. The Ridge had seen nothing like it in decades. Stormbane and Blackthorn, Redwood and Silverfang. 4 hearts bound not only by duty but by love. And as music swelled, as lanterns flickered high into the night, Iris knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 35. The weddings. The weddings of the 2 best friends were celebrations that shook the very earth of Lichen Ridge. The Stormbane wedding was elegant, bathed in white and silver, with candles stretching as far as the eye could see. Ivory drapes cascaded from the high beams of the grand hall, soft light flickering against polished marble. The scent of fresh roses and jasmine clung to the air, and delicate strings of violin music wrapped around the gathered guests like a spell. Every detail spoke of the old Stormbane legacy, ancient, dignified, and steeped in quiet strength. Christopher stood at the altar in a tailored black suit, his gray eyes locked firmly on Iris, as though she were the only person in existence. His jaw tightened the moment she stepped into view. She appeared in a gown of flowing satin, the fabric shimmering faintly with each movement as though woven with moonlight itself. A veil, thin as gossamer, floated gently behind her as she walked, and for a moment the entire hall hushed, struck breathless by her presence. The silence broke with a collective sigh, a ripple of emotion as she drew closer. Christopher's fingers twitched at his side, aching to reach for her even before the vows had been spoken. His wolf stirred within him, pushing at the surface, desperate to claim her again and again before the eyes of their people. When Iris finally reached him, she looked up through the veil, her blue eyes gleaming with both softness and power. Christopher exhaled slowly, as though he'd been holding his breath for years waiting for this single moment. "You're mine," he whispered low enough for only her to hear. "And you're mine," she whispered back, her voice steady, though her hands trembled when she placed them in his. The officiant's words blurred into the background for both of them, lost to the thunder of their hearts. Iris could feel the heat of his palms searing through her skin, grounding her, tethering her to him as though there was no one else alive in the world. When the officiant was done and they exchanged their official marital vows, they exchanged rings made with diamonds. The hall erupted in applause, voices rising in cheers that echoed off the stone walls. The Stormbane and Blackthorn pack, proud and strong, stood as witnesses to the moment their Alpha and Luna became one, the bond between them glowing bright enough to be felt by all. But Iris only saw him, only felt him, and in that moment, she knew, unbreakable wasn't strong enough a word. The Redwood wedding was different, but no less breathtaking. Where Stormbane was solemn and regal, Redwood was alive with fire. The ceremony was held outdoors beneath strings of golden lights, the sky overhead painted with hues of violet and amber as the sun dipped behind the trees. The sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and lively drums filled the air, a stark contrast to the hushed reverence of Stormbane. Maya stood before her pack in a gown as wild and bold as she was, deep red, embroidered with gold threads that glowed like embers in the light. Her fiery hair tumbled loose over her shoulders, untamed and radiant. Her grin, mischievous as ever, widened as Damien reached for her hands. Damien, broad-shouldered and effortlessly charming, had made his proposal in true Silverfang fashion. Bold, public, unapologetic. He had dropped to one knee in the heart of Redwood's town square, his voice booming for all to hear. "Maya Redwood, will you be my Luna, my partner, my fire, forever?" The memory of the roar of approval still lingered in the pack's voices as they cheered during the ceremony, some even stomping their feet in rhythm with the drums. Maya smirked at Damien as the officiant stumbled over his words to be heard over the rowdy crowd. "I told you they'd never sit quietly for this," she teased. "And I told you," Damien leaned close, his lips brushing her ear as he spoke, "that the world could explode around me and I'd still only hear you." Her grin softened, her sharpness melting into something tender. "Then hear this. Yes. Always yes." When the moment came, Maya tilted her head proudly, baring her neck with no hesitation. Damien marked her in one swift, powerful movement, his arms crushing her against him as though he never meant to let her go again, she but him back effortlessly sealing their bond. The energy that rippled through Redwood was electric. Wolves howled, glasses were raised, and music surged louder, spilling into the forest. The weight of leadership settled onto their shoulders, but instead of pressing them down, it lifted them higher. Together they looked every bit like they had been born for it. At both weddings, Iris and Maya clasped each other's hands, tears brimming in their eyes. "Can you believe this?" Maya whispered during her vows, her voice shaking even as her lips quirked in a half-smile. "I can," Iris whispered back, her voice thick with emotion. "Because we always dreamed of it." The two friends held on tightly, their bond as fierce and enduring as the vows they had spoken to their mates. In that moment, surrounded by two packs, two ceremonies, and two loves that felt like destiny itself, they knew their paths, though different, would always remain entwined. Two weddings, two futures, one unbreakable sisterhood that neither time nor distance could ever unravel. And as the music rose, the laughter spilled, and the night deepened, Lichen Ridge itself seemed to pulse with life. The air was thick with promise, with hope, and with the kind of joy that marked the beginning of something greater. The Stormbane and Redwood packs celebrated until dawn, the earth itself trembling beneath the stomps and howls of wolves rejoicing. The weddings of the two best friends did not just shake the earth. They etched themselves into the history of Lichen Ridge, moments that would be told and retold for generations. And at the center of it all were Iris and Maya, two women who had always believed, always dreamed, and now stood as proof that those dreams could burn bright enough to set the world alight. Chapter 36. New Life. Not long after, joy multiplied. The estates of both Stormbane and Redwood, once filled with the weight of politics and the whispers of old vows, now buzzed with a new kind of energy. Laughter, lullabies, and the scent of baby powder mixed with fresh coffee. Maya gave birth first, to a handsome boy with soft dark curls and curious green eyes. They named him Michael Redwood, and Damien's pride knew no bounds. The first time he held the baby in the hospital room, his usually cocky grin broke into tears he didn't even bother hiding. "Look at him, Maya," Damien whispered hoarsely, kissing her forehead. "He's perfect. He's ours." Maya, pale but glowing, let out a tired laugh. "Of course he's perfect. He's mine." She winked at him, even as her arms trembled from exhaustion. Then she looked at her son again, and her playful grin softened into something reverent. "Michael. My little miracle." Michael quickly became the heart of Redwood. Maya adored him, often holding him up in the sunlight on their patio, as though showing the world her greatest treasure. Pack members would stop mid-task just to smile and wave at him, and Maya never minded. "Let him be adored," she'd say. "He deserves it. He's going to be alpha one day." Damien, for all his bravado, became a father who could barely let go of his son. He was spotted more than once pacing the halls at night, cradling Michael against his chest, humming off-key lullabies he'd never admit to singing. "You're ridiculous," Maya teased one evening. Walking in to find Damien asleep in the rocking chair, Michael nestled against him like a king in his castle. Damien opened one eye lazily. "Ridiculous? No. Obsessed? Definitely. And I'm fine with that." Iris's turn came soon after. Her labor was long, hours that stretched into the quiet of night, but when the cry finally pierced the air of the hospital ward, it was like the world itself paused to listen. The nurses gasped when they first laid eyes on her daughter. Ariana Fisher Blackthorne, a name chosen carefully. Ariana had raven dark hair like Christopher's and striking blue eyes like Iris's. Even in her first hours, her little features carried a kind of presence that silenced the room. Christopher, who had always carried himself with a composed, measured air, broke the moment he held his daughter. His gray eyes shimmered, his lips trembling as he whispered, She's so beautiful, Iris. I don't deserve either of you." Iris, sweat damp and tired but radiant, reached out to touch her daughter's cheek. "Don't you dare say that. She's ours. She's everything we dreamed of." From the very beginning, Ariana was adored. Her every laugh was like music, her every step like a celebration. The families grew together. In the early weeks, Maya and Iris spent their afternoons at each other's estates, their babies bundled in soft blankets. Sometimes they sat in Maya's sunlit living room, coffee mugs on the table, Michael and Ariana resting in bassinets side by side. "Can you believe this?" Maya whispered once, rocking Michael gently. "You and me, we went from sneaking snacks in class to this." Iris laughed softly, leaning over to adjust Ariana's tiny hat. "From exams and whispered crushes to diapers and bottles. Life moves fast, doesn't it?" Maya grinned, though her eyes softened. "But we got everything we wanted. Best friends, partners we love, children who'll grow up side by side. Just like us." Celine, though still young, was utterly captivated by her niece. Every day after school, she would run into Stormbane Estate, dropping her backpack at the door and rushing upstairs. "Where's Ariana? Where's my baby girl?" Iris would laugh as Celine scooped the infant into her arms, whispering, "I'll protect you. Don't worry. I'll always protect you." There was something fierce in Celine's devotion, something Iris recognized, that unyielding loyalty that had carried through every stage of her sister's life. Christopher noticed too, watching the bond form with a thoughtful look. "She loves Ariana almost as much as we do," he murmured one evening. Iris smiled softly, brushing Ariana's dark hair. "Almost? No. She loves her entirely, and I wouldn't want it any other way." The pack, the families, even the council elders, all marveled at this new chapter. At pack gatherings, Michael would be passed around like the jewel of Redwood, Damien strutting proudly nearby. Ariana would sit on Christopher's lap, tiny hands clutching at his tie, as if she knew even then that she carried Stormbane's legacy in her veins. One evening, under the glow of fairy lights in Maya's garden, both families gathered for dinner. Maya raised her glass of wine. "To new life," she said, smiling at Iris. "To new life," Iris echoed, clinking her glass against hers. Damien added with a grin. "And to future trouble. Because if these two grow up anything like their mothers," Christopher smirked, finishing smoothly, "then Lichen Ridge better be prepared." Laughter rose into the night, echoing across the garden, mingling with the soft coos of the babies who were already reshaping the world around them. But in the quiet moments, when the guests were gone, when the babies were asleep, when the houses finally settled into silence, Iris would stand by Ariana's crib, watching her daughter breathe. And every time, she felt the same vow echo in her chest. "I'll protect you," she whispered, brushing a kiss to her daughter's forehead. "Always, whatever comes, whatever shadows try to touch us, I'll be your shield." The world of Lichen Ridge had seen war, betrayal, and ancient grudges. But now, in the soft glow of new beginnings, it saw hope. And in the hearts of Iris and Maya, two best friends, two mothers, two leaders, hope burned brighter than it ever had before. Chapter 37. The Kitchen Dream. Years later, one afternoon at Stormbane Estate, the heart of the house wasn't in its grand council chambers or the gilded library where portraits of ancestors lined the walls. No, it was in the kitchen, where warmth and laughter lived. The wide marble counters were messy with bowls and spoons, dough rising in pans and herbs scattered across the table like little green confetti. Sunlight streamed in through the tall windows, catching the dusting of flour that hung in the air like soft snow. At the center of it all were Iris and Ariana, mother and daughter, their hands coated in flour, their cheeks streaked with sugar. "Mama," Ariana said seriously, patting her small hands against a lump of dough that looked more like a lopsided cloud than a loaf of bread. "When I grow up, I'm going to be a chef. A famous one. A 5-star chef. Everyone in Lichen Ridge will know my name." Her little brows furrowed in concentration, her tongue sticking out slightly as she tried to press the dough into something resembling a circle. Iris chuckled, leaning over to guide her daughter's hands. She brushed a streak of flour off Ariana's cheek, though more of it ended up smeared across her own fingers. "A chef, Not an Alpha, not a Luna?" The question was teasing, but genuine too, because Iris had grown up with those expectations, had been raised with the constant reminder that her life was bigger than herself. Ariana shook her head fiercely, her raven dark hair bouncing around her shoulders. Her blue eyes, so much like Iris's, sparked with determination. "No. I want to make food that makes people happy. I want to cook feasts so good that everyone smiles, and when people eat my food, they'll forget they were ever sad." Iris paused, watching her daughter with quiet awe. For all her years of training, for all her lessons about power and duty, this little girl was teaching her something she'd almost forgotten: the importance of joy in the simplest of things. Her heart swelled. She pulled Ariana close, wrapping her arms around her, pressing a kiss into the silky strands of her daughter's dark hair. "Then that's what you'll be, my love. And I'll be your first and most loyal customer." Ariana giggled, wriggling in her mother's embrace. "You'll eat everything I make? Even if it's bad? Especially if it's bad," Iris teased, poking her nose. "That's what loyal customers do." At that moment, a deep voice came from the doorway. "Bad food? In this house?" Christopher leaned against the frame, his sharp suit jacket tossed casually over his shoulder, his tie loosened from a long day of meetings. Yet his gray eyes softened the instant they landed on the scene before him. His Luna and his daughter, his entire world, standing in the middle of a flower-dusted battlefield. "I hope I'm included on the customer list," he added, walking in slowly, his voice carrying that blend of command and affection only he could manage. Ariana squealed, "Papa, come try my bread!" Christopher raised a brow at the misshapen lump of dough. That bread! He shot Iris a playful look. Should I be worried? Iris laughed, tossing a handful of flour at him. Don't you dare discourage her! He caught the flour on his sleeve with mock offense, brushing it away with exaggerated care. I wouldn't dream of it. Then he crouched beside Ariana, eye level with her. So, a chef, not a Luna? Ariana nodded firmly, placing her flour-caked hands on her hips, mimicking her mother's posture when she was making an important point. A chef. I don't want to rule people. I want to feed them. Christopher studied her for a moment, then smiled. That rare, unguarded smile that he saved only for his family. Then feed them well, little wolf, because food is its own kind of power. It brings people together. Ariana beamed, clearly satisfied with his answer. See, Mama? Papa agrees. The rest of the afternoon unfolded in bursts of laughter and chaos. Ariana insisted on making cookies next, carefully cracking eggs while Iris hovered nervously to prevent Shell from falling into the bowl. Christopher pretended to be the official taste tester, sneaking bits of dough until Ariana swatted at him with her wooden spoon. No more, Papa, you'll ruin it. Ruin it? He echoed, feigning shock. I'm improving it. The kitchen echoed with giggles, the clatter of spoons, the sweet smell of sugar and cinnamon filling the air. By the time evening came, the counters were a disaster. Streaks of flour, sticky bowls, a tray of unevenly baked cookies that ranged from golden to slightly burnt. But to Ariana, it was perfection. She carried the tray proudly to the dining table where Celine, now a teenager, was working on her laptop. Try one, Ariana demanded, setting the plate down dramatically. Celine raised a brow but took one, biting into the cookie. Her face softened almost immediately, her eyes widening. This is actually good. Ariana glowed. See, I told you! I'm going to be a 5-star chef! Celine smiled, reaching out to ruffle her niece's hair. I believe you, Ari, just maybe work on your bread first. The room filled with laughter again, the kind that echoed off the walls and settled into the heart. Later that night, after Ariana had fallen asleep, her little hands still faintly dusted with flour, Iris and Christopher stood by her bed, watching her chest rise and fall. She really means it, Iris whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. She's so sure of who she wants to be. Christopher slid an arm around her waist, pulling her close. And we'll let her be exactly that. Alpha, Luna, chef, artist, whatever she chooses, as long as she's happy. Iris leaned into him, her gaze still fixed on Ariana's sleeping face. You know, she has your stubbornness. And your heart, Christopher said quietly. In that moment, with the soft hum of the night settling around them, the Stormbane estate seemed to glow brighter than ever before. Not because of its legacy or its power, but because of the love that filled it. Simple, messy, radiant love. And in the kitchen below, still dusted with flour and the scent of baked cookies, Ariana's dream lingered in the air. A dream that promised joy, laughter, and a future where happiness mattered just as much as duty. Chapter 38. Bonds and Shadows. The sun had dipped low over Stormbane Estate, painting the stone walls in hues of gold and amber. The air was warm but breezy, scented with lilacs and the faint sweetness of freshly mown grass. In the courtyard, laughter danced like music. Ariana Fisher Blackthorne, still just a little girl with raven-dark hair tumbling freely around her shoulders, skipped between the hedges with a small woven basket clutched to her chest. She darted from bush to bush, her hands full of daisies she had picked herself, humming a tune only she seemed to know. Every so often she paused, arranging the flowers carefully in her basket before spinning on her toes and twirling, letting her laughter spill into the air. The staff paused in their work to smile at her. Some even whispered how she was the light of the estate, the joy that carried through its grand but sometimes heavy halls. For Iris and Christopher, their daughter's happiness was the greatest balm to the weight of responsibility they bore as leaders of Stormbane. It was on such a day, golden, quiet, deceptively peaceful, that Cross Redwood came to visit. His car, sleek and black with polished chrome details, rolled up the gravel path. The engine hummed low and steady, almost predatory, and the moment the staff saw the redwood crest emblazoned on its side, black and crimson, bold as blood, whispers rose like wind through the hedges. "Cross Redwood," one of the gardeners murmured, exchanging a wary glance with another. "What's he doing here?" Even after years of uneasy peace, the name Redwood carried weight. And Cross himself, his reputation stretched far beyond Lichen Ridge. Ruthless, cunning, unpredictable, he was the kind of man people lowered their voices for, the kind whose shadow loomed long before he ever stepped foot on your property. Iris Stormbane Blackthorn greeted him at the steps. She stood tall in a soft cream blouse and fitted slacks, her long blonde hair catching the dying sunlight like strands of gold. To anyone else, she looked perfectly composed, poised as the Luna she was meant to be, but inside her pulse thrummed with unease. "Cross," she said warmly, offering the kind of smile that could disarm a room. "It's been some time." Cross stepped out of his car with deliberate ease. He wore a dark jacket, his shirt crisp, his posture dripping confidence. His eyes, dark as coal, sharp as obsidian, lingered on Iris a moment too long. The smile that curved his lips was polite, but beneath it lived something else. Admiration, hunger, that dangerous thread of obsession that years hadn't unraveled. "Too long, Iris," he replied, his voice smooth, velvet over steel. He let his gaze drift almost lazily over the estate grounds before landing back on her. "I came to wish you well. Stormbane prospers under your rule. You and Christopher have done much." The compliment was simple, but the way he said her name, the way he said you, carried weight. It was then that Christopher Blackthorn appeared. His presence was felt before it was seen, the heavy, sure footsteps, the quiet command that came with his every movement. He stepped down onto the stone path, tall and steady in a tailored suit. His hand instinctively brushed against the small of Iris's back, protective, grounding. His gray eyes narrowed slightly the moment they met Cross's. He saw it instantly, the flicker in the man's gaze, that thread of hunger that never seemed to die. "Your words are kind," Christopher said evenly, his tone neutral but carrying the edge of warning. "But see that they are all you bring." Cross smirked, the expression dancing on the line between mocking and charming. "Of course. I bear no ill will." He tilted his head, as though amused at Christopher's suspicion. Then, with a shift so subtle it could have been mistaken for sincerity, his gaze moved back to Iris. His voice softened. "I only wish you happiness." The words hung in the air, heavy and intimate. Behind them, the screen door banged open. Ariana came bounding out, daisies spilling from her basket as she ran toward her parents. "Mama! Papa! Look what I—" She froze mid-step when she spotted Cross, her blue eyes wide, uncertain. Cross glanced at her, and something unreadable flickered across his face. His smile shifted, softer this time, though his eyes carried shadows. Christopher stepped forward immediately, placing himself between Cross and Ariana with casual but unmistakable authority. "It's late," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "You've delivered your words. Now perhaps it's time you were on your way." Cross's smirk didn't falter. He inclined his head slightly, mock respectful. "As you wish." He stepped back, turning with unhurried grace toward his car, but before slipping inside, his eyes flicked to Iris once more, lingering, heavy with the promise of something unspoken. Then he was gone, the car's engine growling low as it rolled down the gravel drive, the crunch of its tires fading into silence. Christopher's jaw tightened as he exhaled slowly. His arm was still firm around Iris's waist, his hand steadying her as though she needed anchoring. He kept his voice low, meant only for her. "I don't trust him, Iris. I see it still, the way he looks at you. That obsession doesn't die easily." Iris turned slightly, placing her hand over his chest. Her blue eyes softened, calm against the storm that always simmered in him when Cross's name was involved. "Christopher, you worry too much. Cross is harmless. Whatever he might feel, it doesn't matter." Her voice was gentle, steady as stone. She touched his face lightly, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You're my husband. You're my heart. Nothing he does could ever change that." He searched her eyes for a long moment, torn between the instinct to argue and the comfort of her certainty. Finally, his shoulders eased. With a sigh, he pressed his lips against her forehead, lingering there. "I only want to keep you safe," he murmured. "And you do," she whispered back, her hand curling against his. "Always." From the steps, Ariana watched them, clutching her basket of daisies tightly to her chest. The innocence in her face warred with the flicker of curiosity she'd caught in Cross's dark stare. She didn't understand it yet, not fully, but she would remember it. The way he looked at her mother, the way her father stood between them, the tension in the air that even a child could feel. Because even in golden light, shadows lingered. And though the day ended with laughter in the kitchen and daisies arranged in a vase on the table, the echo of Cross Redwood's visit hung over Stormbane Estate like a storm cloud waiting on the horizon. Chapter 39. Flynn's Arrival. Months later, the halls of Stormbane were filled with joy once more. Iris gave birth to her second child, a boy they named Flynn Fisher Blackthorn. The night he was born was unlike any other. Rain hammered against the estate's tall windows, and the storm winds howled across the rolling hills as though the world itself wanted to mark his arrival. Lightning cracked the sky, briefly illuminating the stone turrets of Stormbane, and thunder followed close behind, shaking the earth. Inside the master chambers, though, the storm was a distant sound, muffled by the warmth and glow of candlelight. Iris lay against the pillows, exhausted yet radiant, her golden hair plastered slightly to her temples. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but the moment the small, swaddled bundle was placed in her arms, every ounce of pain was forgotten. She gasped softly, her lips parting in wonder. His tiny fists were clenched against her chest, his skin flushed pink, his breathing quick and sharp like a bird's. She pressed her lips to his downy head, inhaling his newborn scent, a mix of warmth and sweetness that struck her heart with fierce love. Christopher stood by the bedside, awe in his usually composed expression. He leaned over the cradle where the midwife had briefly set the baby to check him, then looked back at Iris. "He looks just like Ariana." "And just like me," he murmured, his voice almost reverent, as though he couldn't quite believe it. His hand reached down, brushing a finger gently against the infant's soft cheek. Flynn stirred, his face scrunching. Then, as though responding to his father's presence, his eyes fluttered open. They were blue, brilliant, striking, the exact shade of Iris's own. Christopher drew in a breath, smiling faintly. "But those eyes, they're yours, Iris." Her lips curved, tears welling in her gaze as she held their son closer. "Ours," she whispered. "Every part of him is ours." The storm outside raged on, but within those walls there was nothing but the fragile stillness of new life and the unbreakable bond of family. A few moments later, soft footsteps padded into the chamber. The door creaked open just enough for a small head of raven hair to peek through. Ariana, still small herself, stood in her nightgown, the hem brushing her ankles. Her wide blue eyes darted toward the bed, catching sight of the bundle in her mother's arms. "Papa?" she whispered, hesitant, as though afraid she might disturb something sacred. Christopher turned and smiled gently, beckoning her inside. "Come, little one. There's someone you should meet." She padded across the carpet, her tiny feet making no sound. Standing on tiptoe, she leaned against the edge of the cradle, staring at the baby nestled against Iris. Her nose wrinkled, curiosity brimming in her gaze. "He's so little," Ariana whispered, her voice trembling with both awe and uncertainty. "Yes," Iris said softly, brushing back her daughter's dark hair with her free hand. "Little but strong, just like you were." Ariana's lips parted in wonder. "Mama, can I hold him?" For a moment Christopher hesitated, instinctively protective, but Iris caught his eye and gave a small nod. She shifted carefully, easing the swaddled bundle into Ariana's careful arms. The little girl's face lit up with pride as she looked down at her baby brother, cradling him as though he were made of glass. Flynn stirred, making a small sound, and Ariana froze until Iris gently guided her hands. "It's all right," Iris murmured. "He knows you." Ariana's shoulders relaxed. She leaned her head close, whispering so softly that only those nearest could hear. "Don't worry, little brother. I'll take care of you." The midwives and attendants slipped quietly from the room, leaving the family in rare privacy. The storm still pressed against the windows, but it seemed distant, as though Stormbane itself formed a shield around them. Christopher lowered himself into the chair beside the bed, his arm curling protectively around Iris's shoulders. His eyes never strayed far from his newborn son or his daughter, who sat perched on the bed now, her small arms stubbornly refusing to let go of Flynn. "He came with the storm," Christopher said quietly, his voice thoughtful, as if the world wanted to herald him. Iris tilted her head toward him, her expression soft. "Perhaps the storm wanted to test us, to see if we were ready to welcome him, and we are." He smiled faintly, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Always." Ariana glanced up at them then, her young face serious in a way that made both parents pause. "Papa," she said, "when Flynn grows, will he be strong like you?" Christopher chuckled low, reaching out to tuck the blanket tighter around his son. "If he wishes to be. Strength isn't just in muscles, Ariana, it's here." He tapped her gently over her heart. "And here." He tapped her temple. Ariana nodded solemnly, digesting his words. She looked back at Flynn and whispered, "Then I'll make sure he has both." The room fell into silence for a moment, broken only by the crackle of the fireplace and the storm rolling across the estate. The weight of her words, innocent, yet promising, seemed to echo, as though they would matter in ways none of them could yet see. As the night stretched on, Iris eventually coaxed Ariana into laying Flynn back in his cradle. The little girl pouted but obeyed, pressing a soft kiss to her brother's forehead before climbing into her mother's lap, tired eyes drooping. "Rest now," Iris whispered, brushing her daughter's hair. "You've already been a wonderful sister tonight." Within minutes, Ariana's breathing slowed, her head resting against Iris's shoulder. Christopher gathered her gently in his arms, carrying her to her bed down the hall. When he returned, Iris was still awake, her gaze fixed on the cradle where Flynn slept. "You're worried," Christopher murmured, sliding back onto the bed beside her. Her fingers twisted in the sheets as she whispered, "I only want to protect them, both of them. Ariana is still so little, and now Flynn." "Christopher, the world we live in doesn't forgive weakness." He pulled her close, his arm wrapping around her shoulders, his gaze fixed fiercely on their son. "Then they will never be weak. Not while we breathe. I will guard them, Iris, with everything I am." Her hand found his, gripping tight. Together. Together, he vowed. In the cradle, Flynn shifted, his tiny fingers unfurling as though reaching for something unseen. Outside, the storm began to ease, the thunder rolling away into silence. The rain softened to a gentle patter, a lullaby against the stone walls of Stormbane, and in that quiet, the Blackthorn family, complete now in ways they hadn't been before, allowed themselves to rest, unaware of how the storm that marked Flynn's arrival was not just of weather but of fate. For though the rain had passed, the world beyond those walls still watched. And storms, once born, have a way of returning. Chapter 40. Maya's Visit. The afternoon sun poured through the tall glass windows of Stormbane Estate, bathing the nursery in a soft golden glow. The air was warm with a faint scent of jasmine from the gardens outside, mixed with the sweet powder of baby lotion and freshly laundered blankets. Iris sat in the rocking chair near the cradle, humming gently as Flynn shifted in his sleep, his tiny fingers curled around the edge of his swaddle. The creak of the front doors echoed faintly down the hall, followed by a familiar voice ringing up the staircase. "Iris Stormbane, you better not be hiding from me with that newborn of yours." Iris smiled even before the nursery door opened. A whirlwind of fiery red hair and vibrant energy breezed into the room. Maya Redwood, dressed in ripped jeans, a leather jacket, and her usual air of defiance against anything ordinary, strode in with Michael bouncing at her side. Michael's blue eyes scanned the room with curiosity, his little sneakers squeaking on the polished floor as he pulled away from his mother's hand the second he spotted Ariana in the corner. "Maya," Iris said warmly, rising to her feet. They embraced tightly, years of sisterhood compressed into the simple hug. But Maya's eyes were already drawn to the cradle. She broke into a grin, her laugh bubbling out like fire meeting air. "Oh, Iris, you've done it again! Another little blackthorn!" Iris tilted her head, brushing a loose strand of blonde hair back as she chuckled. "What do you mean?" Maya leaned over the cradle, her breath catching softly as she studied Flynn's peaceful face. "I mean, Christopher's strong genes refuse to be ignored. Look at them both. Ariana and Flynn are practically his mirror image. Same hair, same bone structure, even the stubborn jaw. Only the eyes tell the truth of you." Just then, the door eased open again and Christopher entered, carrying a tray with mugs of steaming coffee. His sharp gray suit had been exchanged for a simple white shirt rolled at the sleeves, though he still carried himself like the alpha everyone looked to. He caught Maya's words and smirked as he set the tray down on the dresser. "Can I help it if I stamp my children well?" he said smoothly, leaning against the doorframe. Maya swatted him playfully across the arm. "Proud man. But it's true. These two will grow up with their father's shadow and their mother's light. A dangerous combination if I've ever seen one." Christopher arched a brow, but Iris's soft laugh filled the room, diffusing the remark. "Dangerous or not, they'll grow up surrounded by love. That's what matters." "Love and power," Maya teased, plopping herself dramatically onto the edge of the bed. "You don't get to forget who you are, Iris. Or who they are." For a brief moment her words hung heavier than intended, reminding them all of the political expectations that forever lingered over their families. But then Ariana's bright laugh cut through the tension. "Mama, look! Michael says Flynn can play with us." Iris turned to see her daughter dragging Michael by the hand, their cheeks flushed with energy. Michael had tugged the cradle slightly, positioning it closer to where they sat on the rug with crayons and paper scattered about. He tapped Flynn's blanket with a sense of seriousness only children carried. "See, Ariana? Now your brother can watch. He's part of the game, too." Ariana giggled, clapping her hands. "Yes! Flynn can be the judge. He'll tell us whose drawing is the best." Iris moved quickly but gently, steadying the cradle before it tipped too far. She shot Maya a look, half exasperation, half amusement. "Your son is already trying to induct mine into mischief." Maya grinned, leaning back with pride. "Like mother, like son." Redwood children don't waste time, Iris. The nursery filled with the sound of their laughter, layered with the innocent giggles of Ariana and Michael as they sprawled on the rug. Michael picked up a crayon and began scribbling furiously, whispering to Ariana that his drawing would definitely win. Ariana, sticking out her tongue, drew a wild rainbow over the paper, announcing that Flynn liked hers better already. Meanwhile, Maya reached over and brushed her hand across Iris's arm. Her voice softened, losing its teasing edge. "He's perfect, Iris. Flynn, He's going to change your world just as much as Ariana did. Iris looked at her son, his tiny chest rising and falling with steady breaths, and then at her daughter, who now had crayon streaks across her cheeks from Michael's playful nudges. Her heart swelled so full it almost hurt. "They already have," Iris whispered. Christopher crossed the room then, pressing a gentle kiss to his wife's temple, his arm brushing against hers as he looked at their children with quiet pride. "This is just the beginning," he murmured. "Everything we've built. Our families, our bonds. This is the future we've always dreamed of." Maya nodded, her fiery eyes softening as she looked at the children playing on the rug. "Then let's raise them right," she said. "Together. Redwood and Stormbane. Our kids will grow up knowing loyalty, friendship, and strength. No politics can tear that apart." Iris squeezed her hand in agreement. The sun dipped lower, casting amber light across the nursery walls, gilding every detail in a glow that felt almost magical. The sound of children's laughter echoed through the estate, as warm and steady as a promise. And for that one moment, surrounded by love, friendship, and the bonds of family, the world outside, the whispers of grudges, the shadows of old vows, faded into silence. Chapter 41. Bonds of Childhood. The years slipped forward like pages in a well-read book, each one carrying its share of laughter, growth, and unspoken promises. What began with playdates between the houses of Stormbane and Redwood soon became tradition. Weekend after weekend, the Blackthorn children, Ariana with her fierce blue eyes and Flynn with his curious, steady gaze, could be found tumbling through the wide courtyards of the Redwood estate alongside Michael, Maya's bright, mischievous boy. The Redwood gardens stretched like a wonderland for children. Neatly clipped hedges lined winding gravel paths, fountains shimmered under the sunlight, and tall, ancient oaks shaded hidden corners where imaginations ran wild. To the children, it was no mere estate. It was a castle, a kingdom alive with battles to be fought, adventures to be discovered, and secrets to be whispered. On one bright Saturday afternoon, Michael charged down the lawn with a wooden sword clutched in his hand, his hair glinting auburn in the sunlight. "Come on, Ari, we'll defend the castle from invaders!" Ariana, dressed in a little blue dress that had already acquired a streak of grass across the hem, darted after him with fire in her steps. "I'll be the commander then!" she cried, snatching up a fallen branch that became her makeshift blade. Michael stopped, chest puffed. "No, I'm the commander. You're my knight." "I'm not your knight," Ariana shot back, her chin tilting upward in that stubborn Stormbane way. "I'm the commander. You can be—" "My guard." Flynn, still so small that his words came in broken little bursts, toddled behind them, his chubby legs working hard to keep up. "Guard! Guard!" he squealed, clapping his hands. His cheeks flushed pink from the effort, but his laughter rang out clear, filling the air with joy. The children clashed their sticks together in a mock battle, shrieking with glee, while Flynn waved his fists as though summoning victory just by existing. Eventually, Ariana seized Michael's castle, a low stone bench near the fountain, and declared it her throne. Michael sulked for a heartbeat before Ariana reached over and tugged him onto the bench beside her. "You can be co-commander," she said with a grin. Michael's frown broke into a smile. "Deal. But Flynn is our little soldier." "I soldier!" Flynn yelled proudly, his words still baby-like, his arms raised high in triumph. For Iris and Maya, who watched from the veranda with steaming cups of tea, the sight was nothing short of perfection. Iris leaned back against the wicker chair, her long blonde hair pulled into a loose braid, her eyes soft as they followed her children across the gardens. "They remind me of us," she murmured. Maya, lounging in her usual casual confidence, jeans ripped at the knees, her fiery hair catching every flicker of sunlight, chuckled low. "Don't flatter yourself. We weren't nearly as adorable." Iris laughed quietly, nudging her friend. "No, but we were just as stubborn. You insisted on leading even when I had the better plan." Maya's grin turned wicked. "And you still followed me." Their laughter mingled with the children's joy, a harmony that filled the Redwood estate with warmth. For them, these visits were more than social courtesy. They were a continuation of a bond forged years ago, strengthened now by the sight of their children entwined in the same carefree happiness they once knew. "Sometimes," Maya said softly, her gaze never leaving the children, "I think this is what we always wanted, for them to grow together, to know loyalty before the world tries to teach them rivalry." Iris's smile turned wistful, her fingers tightening on the mug in her hands. "It feels like a dream, and for now, I want it to last." But dreams, as always, had their shadows. From the far side of the courtyard, beyond the hedges where the sunlight faded into darker corners, another figure stood. Tall, sharp, and cloaked not in childhood laughter, but in the weight of unfulfilled desires. Cross Redwood. He had arrived at the estate quietly, without announcement, his black car parked beneath the oaks, its polished surface reflecting fragments of the day's light. No one had expected him, but no one dared to turn him away. He walked the grounds with a familiarity that came from birthright, yet every step was heavy with a restlessness that no power or title seemed able to ease. Now, his dark eyes lingered on the scene before him. He watched Ariana's raven-dark hair catching the sunlight as she swung her stick like a sword. He watched Iris, radiant in her quiet strength, sitting beside Maya, her laughter carrying like a bell through the air. And inside him, something twisted. It was jealousy, sharp and bitter. It was longing, raw and unyielding. And it was anger. Anger not at Iris, nor even at Christopher, but at fate itself for carving him into the role of an outsider, always watching what he could never hold. Years ago he had spoken bold words, vows made in youthful arrogance. "One day I'll mark you. One day you'll be mine." And though the world had proven otherwise, though Iris had chosen Christopher and built a family of her own, those words had not died. They festered. They lived like embers beneath ash, waiting for breath enough to ignite again. When he stepped from the shadows at last, his expression was carefully crafted. Smooth, polite, his smile practiced to disguise the storm beneath. "I didn't know I'd find such a battlefield here," Cross drawled, his voice rich and velvet, carrying across the garden like smoke. The children froze mid-game. Ariana clutched her stick tighter, instinctive wariness flickering across her young features as though something in his tone unsettled her. Michael glanced at him curiously, while Flynn, too young to understand, simply clapped and babbled, "Battle! Battle!" Iris's smile faltered when she saw him, though her composure returned swiftly, like a shield sliding into place. She rose from her chair, Maya stiffening at her side. "Cross," Iris greeted evenly, her voice smooth but edged with formality. "I didn't know you were coming today." Cross's gaze lingered on her, longer than it should have, longer than was comfortable. "It's been too long," he said, dipping his head slightly. "I thought I'd pay my respects to the family and see how the next generation thrives." His eyes flicked to Ariana, who instinctively stepped closer to her mother's side. Maya crossed her arms, her posture defensive, her fiery hair almost seeming to crackle in the sunlight. "Well, you've seen them now. They're children, Cross, not pawns. Let them play." Cross smirked faintly, though the warmth didn't touch his eyes. "Of course." His tone was smooth, respectful even, but there was a weight beneath it, an unspoken yet. From the veranda, Christopher had appeared, his broad frame filling the doorway. His gray eyes narrowed as he took in the scene. Cross standing a little too close, Iris holding herself a little too carefully, the children pressed a little too near. "Cross," Christopher said, his voice low, steady, warning without raising volume. "What brings you here?" Cross didn't flinch. He never did. Instead, he straightened, his smile sharpening at the edges. Nothing but goodwill, Christopher. Surely even you can allow that. For a heartbeat, the air tightened, the gardens holding their breath. Then Iris, ever the bridge between storm and silence, stepped forward, her hand brushing against Christopher's arm. "Let it be," she murmured softly, her blue eyes fixed on her husband's. "For now, let it be." Christopher's jaw tightened, but he said no more. Cross gave one last look. At Iris, at the children, at the life that had never been his, before turning on his heel. His car engine roared to life a few minutes later, carrying him away, but not far enough. Because deep down everyone knew his obsession had not died. It had only grown quieter, more dangerous. And Iris, though she smiled again for her children's sake, felt the echo of his gaze long after he was gone. Chapter 42. A New Secret. The day had ended in a haze of laughter, grass-stained knees, and the shrill cries of childhood triumph echoing across the sprawling lawns of Redwood Estate. By evening, the great house had fallen into a rare quiet, its halls hushed except for the soft crackle of logs in the hearth and the muffled sighs of sleeping children. Ariana and Michael had insisted on building a fortress from cushions and blankets, dragging Flynn into their little empire until he, too, had collapsed mid-play, curled on his side with his small hand still clutching the corner of a pillow. Their laughter had faded into soft breaths, their bodies sprawled before the fire as though the warmth of the flames was a lullaby crafted just for them. Maya and Iris lingered long after, seated in the velvet armchairs near the fireplace. The blaze painted their faces in shades of gold and ember, highlighting the weariness softened by contentment that only mothers truly knew. Maya shifted slowly, her hand drifting, almost unconsciously, to her stomach. Iris noticed the movement, the subtle press of fingers against fabric, the way Maya's expression flickered with something both fragile and bright. "Maya?" Iris leaned forward, her tone touched with curiosity. "What is it? You've been smiling to yourself all evening." Maya bit her lip, eyes shining with a secret she could no longer contain. For a moment, the firelight reflected in her gaze, twin sparks dancing, as though the truth itself glowed from within her. She exhaled, her voice soft, hesitant but threaded with joy. "I haven't told Damien yet," she confessed, lowering her voice as though the very walls might overhear. "But I wanted you to know first." Iris tilted her head, intrigue deepening. "Tell me what?" Maya's lips curved into a smile, tender and triumphant all at once, her hand pressed firmly against her stomach now, the gesture clear. "I'm pregnant. Again." The words seemed to fill the entire room. A burst of life more powerful than the crackle of the fire, or the shadows dancing along the ceiling. For a heartbeat, Iris simply stared, her eyes widening, her breath caught halfway in her throat. Then it came, the rush of emotion bursting through her like sunlight breaking a storm. "Oh, Maya!" Iris gasped, her hands flying to her mouth before laughter and delight escaped her in a squeal. She shot up from her seat, enveloping Maya in a fierce embrace, the kind that left both women breathless and laughing in the warmth of shared joy. "That's wonderful, absolutely wonderful!" Maya's own laughter rang out, rich and genuine, though tears shimmered at the corners of her eyes. "I know. I can hardly believe it myself." Iris pulled back enough to look at her, her own eyes misty with happiness. "Michael will have a sibling. Another little redwood to tumble through these gardens?" "Yes," Maya breathed, brushing at her damp lashes with the back of her hand. "Another redwood. Another chance. Our families—" "They're growing, Iris. Can you imagine? Years from now, Ariana, Flynn, Michael, and this little one—" She pressed her hand gently against her stomach again, reverently. "They'll all grow up together. They'll shape lichen ridge just like we once dreamed." The fire popped, sparks dancing into the chimney, as Iris's gaze drifted to the children curled before the hearth. Ariana's golden hair fanned across the pillow, her small arm draped protectively over Flynn, while Michael's chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm of dreams. They looked like angels, untouched by the weight of the world, their innocence unbroken by sorrow. "Yes," Iris whispered, her voice soft, fragile with longing. "Just like us." The women sat together in silence for a moment, the fire's warmth cradling them, the house wrapped in stillness. Outside, the moon hung low, its silver glow spilling across the manicured lawns, casting long shadows across the estate. But where the fire comforted and the moonlight soothed, something else stirred. Shadows gathered beyond the windows, cloaked in the secrecy of night, watching, always watching. Maya leaned her head against the chair, her hand still resting over her secret. "I'll tell Damien tomorrow," she murmured, her smile soft with anticipation. "I want it to be perfect. Perhaps I'll make his favorite dinner first. Roasted lamb with rosemary, he'll be so happy." "He will," Iris agreed warmly. "He adores you. And he'll adore this child too." Maya chuckled, a little self-deprecating, her cheeks flushing faintly. "Let's hope this one isn't as wild as Michael. I swear he runs from the moment he wakes to the moment he collapses. Damien says it's the redwood blood, but sometimes I think it's just mischief." Iris laughed softly, covering her mouth. "Mischief or not, he's perfect, just like this little one will be." Her words were tender, but her eyes betrayed something else, something unspoken, a ripple of unease threading through her joy. She remembered too well how happiness often drew its own predators, how every smile seemed to cast a shadow long enough for envy to hide within. And as the fire burned lower, painting the walls in wavering gold, Iris felt it, the prickle along her skin, the sense of being observed. Her gaze flickered toward the window, where night pressed like a heavy curtain. Beyond the glass, the dark stretched endless, alive with possibility and danger. But she said nothing. Not to Maya, not tonight. Instead, she reached for her friend's hand, squeezing it firmly, anchoring them both in the warmth of the moment. "This is your secret for now," Iris whispered, her smile faint but steady. "And it will be beautiful." Maya squeezed back, her face soft with gratitude. The fire crackled. The children sighed in their sleep, and outside, unseen eyes lingered. Eyes that burned not with joy but with hunger. Eyes that could not bear the sight of happiness they had been forever denied. The night carried on, silent and endless. And though laughter and secrets filled the redwood estate, a shadow moved closer, its patience sharpening into something dangerous. Because joy, Iris knew deep in her heart, never lived unchallenged. Not in Lichen Ridge. Chapter 43. The Awakening. Iris jerked awake with a cough. Her throat burned, every breath like swallowing fire. Her lungs constricted, pulling in smoke instead of air. She sat up sharply, eyes watering as she reached instinctively for the solid warmth beside her. "Chris!" she gasped, clutching his arm, nails digging in without realizing. "Chris, wake up!" Christopher stirred instantly. Even half buried in sleep, his instincts were sharp, honed by years of leadership and battles fought in shadows. His gray eyes snapped open, his body tensing like a coiled spring. And then he saw it, the haze of black smoke seeping under the door, rolling into their chamber like a living thing. It curled along the ceiling beams, thick and ominous, blotting out the faint moonlight that filtered through the curtains. In an instant, he was on his feet, the sheets falling away. "Iris!" His voice cut through the haze, firm, commanding, "Stay down, keep low." She tried to follow his instruction, crouching as the coughing overtook her. Her golden hair clung damp to her face, her body trembling as she clutched at the sheets for balance. Her chest heaved, panic clawing its way into her bloodstream, hot and relentless. Somewhere in the distance, faint but unmistakable, came the sound that ripped her heart in two. Cries, high-pitched, frightened, her children. Ariana. Flynn. My babies, she choked, her voice breaking as she staggered toward the door, her vision blurred from the sting of smoke, her tears mixing with the soot already collecting in the air. Christopher caught her arm, pulling her back with force born of desperation. I'll get them! His voice was urgent, edged with fear he tried to mask. He shook her gently, trying to keep her focus. You need to breathe. Stay with me, Iris! But the smoke was everywhere now, pressing down like a suffocating hand. Iris's knees buckled, her body faltering. Her limbs felt weak, unsteady, as though every ounce of strength was being drained by the fire's cruel grip. She coughed again, violently, her lungs refusing to obey her. The edges of the world spun in dizzying circles, tilting and collapsing into shadows. Her ears roared with the sound of crackling wood, of her children's cries muffled in the distance. Her blue eyes locked onto Christopher's for one last desperate moment. The man she loved. The man who had stood by her through every storm. His face swam before her, carved in anguish and determination, his hand gripping her as though he could hold her soul inside her body by will alone. Chris. The single word rasped from her lips before she collapsed into his arms. Her body went slack, her head lolling against his chest, her golden hair tangled against his bare skin. No! Christopher's voice broke, raw, hoarse, stripped of all the composure he usually carried. He dropped to one knee, clutching her to him, his heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. Iris, stay with me, stay with me! He shook her gently, then more firmly, his hand cupping her soot-smudged cheek. Her skin was still warm, alive, but her breath came in shallow pulls, each one weaker than the last. The smoke thickened. The air grew hotter, oppressive, pressing down on him from every side. Behind the door, something cracked, a beam, a piece of ceiling giving way, followed by the roar of flames surging forward, greedy and merciless. Christopher's mind raced, every instinct pulling in 1,000 directions. The alpha in him roared to protect, to fight, to save. The mate in him could not, would not, lose her, and above it all, the father in him burned with a single purpose: the children. His jaw clenched, his gray eyes blazing through the haze. He shifted Iris in his arms, cradling her close against his chest. Hold on, my love, he whispered fiercely against her hair. Don't you dare leave me now. Then, tightening his grip, he surged to his feet and moved toward the door. The cries of Ariana and Flynn were louder now, cutting through the inferno's growl. His heart lurched at the sound, his vision sharpening, instincts locking into place. But the path was fire, smoke, ash. The grand Stormbane estate, built with pride and legacy, had become a burning labyrinth intent on swallowing them whole. Christopher pressed a quick, desperate kiss to Iris's temple, his lips trembling against her soot-streaked skin. Then he squared his shoulders, his alpha power thrumming like a storm beneath his skin. Just a little longer, he whispered to her limp form. His voice was ragged but steady with resolve. I'll save them. I'll save us all. With that, he lowered himself, staying crouched as he pushed through the door into the inferno. The world beyond was fire and chaos, smoke clawing at his lungs, flames racing along the walls as if eager to devour the very legacy of Stormbane. But Christopher Fisher Blackthorne would not let the fire win, not while his children screamed for him, not while his mate lay in his arms clinging to life, not while there was even a single breath left in his body. Chapter 44. The Hospital. When she woke again, it wasn't to the warmth of her bed or the steady breath of her husband beside her. It wasn't to the soft golden morning light spilling through Stormbane Estate's windows, or the laughter of her children chasing one another down the hall. It was to the sterile sting of antiseptic, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. Abri, the steady beep. Beep. Beep of monitors. And the ache of smoke still lodged in her chest, making every breath feel like knives dragging across raw flesh. Her lashes fluttered, her throat dry and parched as sand. Slowly, painfully, her eyes opened to the sight of a ceiling she didn't recognize. The dull, off-white tiles swam in her vision, blurred by tears she didn't yet know she was shedding. Iris shifted weakly, trying to turn her head. The stiff hospital sheets rustled against her skin, the sterile smell of disinfectant wrapping around her. Her chest burned as if fire still clung to her lungs. She froze. Christopher wasn't beside her. His warm, steady presence, the anchor she had known for more than a decade, was gone. The bed was cold and wide, untouched except for her. Ariana wasn't curled at her side, her tiny hand gripping Iris's nightgown in her sleep. Flynn wasn't there either, his soft baby curls brushing her chin as he reached up with chubby fists for her hair. The silence of the room hit her first. Wrong, unnatural. The silence of absence. She blinked again, forcing her blurry eyes to focus. It wasn't her husband's strong figure leaning near her, nor a nurse checking her vitals. Instead, a firefighter stood at the end of her bed. His heavy jacket was stripped away, his navy blue undershirt damp with sweat, soot smeared across his face and arms. He looked exhausted, haunted. His helmet rested in his hands, fingers tightening and loosening around it like he didn't know what else to do with them. And his eyes, tired, red-rimmed, were full of something she instantly recognized. Pity. Her voice scraped out of her like shards of glass. "Chris?" she whispered. Her throat burned. "Where's Christopher?" The firefighter shifted, his weight uneasy, his jaw flexing before he spoke. "Iris Stormbane?" His voice was quiet, careful, as though the wrong tone might shatter her into pieces. Her lips trembled. "Yes," she rasped. I'm Iris." He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing hard. His eyes flicked away for a moment, as though he couldn't look at her, but then he forced himself to meet her gaze. I'm so sorry," he whispered. "We tried. We did everything we could. The fire spread too fast. Christopher..." Her heartbeat stuttered in her chest. Her hands clutched at the sheets, twisting them as if she could anchor herself against the words she knew were coming. Ariana. Flynn. The rest of the words broke her, shattered her into jagged fragments. Her cry tore from her chest, raw, animal, agonized, the kind of sound that shook walls and rattled souls. The sterile white of the hospital room could not contain it. Her grief pierced through, echoing down the halls like a wound that would never close. She clawed at the sheets, her nails tearing fabric, her body convulsed, racked by sobs so violent she could barely breathe. "No," the word ripped from her throat, hoarse and broken. "No, no, no, please no!" Her hands fisted against her chest as if she could rip the pain out. "Not them, please, God, not them!" Her voice cracked until it was nothing but gasping, broken sobs. The monitor spiked, alarms beginning to whine as her body gave way under the weight of despair. The firefighter stood frozen, his helmet clutched tight against him, his shoulders bowed. His head dipped low, unable to bear the sight of her unraveling before him. He had seen fire take lives before. He had carried bodies out of houses that became graves. But this grief, this wailing shatter of a woman losing her whole world, it cut deeper than any flame. Nurses rushed in, their voices a blur of murmured reassurances. "It's all right, Mrs. Stormbane. You're safe. Try to breathe. Safe." The word was hollow. What was safety without them? Hands tried to soothe her, tried to still her trembling arms, but Iris fought against them, twisting, sobbing, gasping for a reality that no longer existed. She was drowning in absence. Her mind raced desperately, clinging to denial. "No, no, this isn't real. Chris would never leave me, he promised. Ariana, she was just learning her letter. She's too little to go. Flynn..." My baby, my sweet boy, he hasn't even learned his words yet. He can't be. The images flooded her, stabbing through her chest. Ariana's proud smile as she held her baby brother for the first time. Flynn's giggle when Christopher lifted him high into the air. Chris leaning against the doorway after a long day, his tie loose, his eyes soft when they fell on her. All of it gone. Her sobs shook the bed, violent enough to pull at the IV taped to her arm. One nurse tried to hold her shoulders, whispering, "Mrs. Stormbane, you need to calm down. Please." But Iris screamed instead, a sound so broken the nurse's own eyes brimmed with tears. "Don't tell me to calm down! They're gone!" Her fists slammed weakly against her chest, as though punishing herself for surviving. I should have saved them, I should have." Her words collapsed into another wave of sobs, her chest heaving until she could no longer breathe, her vision tunneled, black spots clouding the edges. A doctor rushed in, speaking quickly to the nurses. "She's hyperventilating. Get oxygen. Now." A mask was pressed against her face, cool air flowing in, but Iris tore at it, thrashing, "I don't want air! I want them! Bring them back to me, please! Please!" Her pleas broke into helpless sobbing again, the sound of a woman split in two. The firefighter's hands clenched tighter around his helmet. His lips parted as if he might speak, offer some comfort. But what words could exist for this kind of loss? He bowed his head lower, the guilt of survival pressing heavy on his chest. The doctor gave a soft order, and another nurse prepared a syringe, a sedative. They couldn't let her drown in her grief. Not yet. Iris barely noticed the prick at her arm through her sobbing. All she felt was the cavernous emptiness where her heart used to be. Her cries slowed, her body heavy and weak. Her vision dimmed again, the harsh fluorescent light smearing into streaks of white. Her last thought before the darkness took her wasn't of herself. It was of them. Christopher's laugh, Ariana's tiny hand, Flynn's soft curls. The family she had loved since high school, since forever. Her family, her heart, all gone in one night of fire and smoke. And as the blackness swallowed her, a single tear slipped down her temple, falling silently into the sheets. Thank you so much to all my amazing channel members. It truly means the world to me that you've chosen to support me and be part of this community. Your encouragement and love keep me going every day. If you enjoyed this audiobook, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on upcoming releases. I'll be dropping part 2s of all the stories very soon, exclusively for members first. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and save the playlist so you can easily catch up on future uploads. Now tell me, did you enjoy part 4 of The Alpha's Abused Mate? I know the ending was heartbreaking with Iris losing her husband and kids in the fire, but don't worry. More is coming in part 5 and you won't want to miss it. Stay tuned because the story is only getting more intense. Thank you once again for being here and supporting my work. You're the reason I keep creating.